Well, hello and a warm welcome. Today I had the longest game I've ever played, a 5-hour marathon against Kari Teräsalo. Now, before the game, I thought this was going to be a walk in the park because I checked out his rating and he was 1500 something, 1569. But now when I come back home and see his chart, in fact, he used to have a peak rating in the 1800s, maybe even kissing 1900 for a second, but he had just crashed of late. And that's why his rating 1567. I thought, whoa, this is going to be easy. But it was no walk in the park. This guy was tenacious as hell. So let's get into the game. I'm black. And we're playing the very typical Scotch game here, where the ideas are related to this motif. So if he captures here, bishop would take this bishop and still threatening mate, so he would have to capture back ugly, and then the queen would capture here. A lot of patterns like that at play in this game, in this position. And then we have the typical unleashing move, which is d5. You have to take back with the queen because bishop is taking this. And here we have basically the start of the middle game. The opening's complete, and now it's middle game time. This was the first move where I had to make a real think on what I'm going to do. And there were many different factors to consider when making that decision. For example, pawn up was a thought. Rook here was a thought. Bishop here was a thought. Knight back was a thought. Knight here was also a thought. A lot of different factors to consider, a lot of different moves. And when making this kind of evaluation, you got to think in terms of strategic principles. So strategically, if I were to move this pawn up here, there's a very good chance that we will end up with an isolated pawn in the center. Now, do I want to have an IQP in a game where we only have one minor piece remaining? No, I do not. IQPs are suited for games where you have a lot of these knights and bishops floating around. So strategically, I had to rule that one out. What about rook here? It's somewhat tricky. There's all sorts of dynamics at play because of pawn to b4, which could cause my queen to end up in some weird positions. It's just a little messy and didn't seem to be quite right. Bishop here also kind of problematic for similar reasons. And then, of course, is knight here, which honestly I didn't think about enough. In retrospect, this is maybe the best move I should have played, but I chose the more simple, straightforward knight f6. All right, he's 1500. I can win this. Come on. So he continues on, and I get the bishop out. Now, the idea here was to just develop the bishop and not worry about this because I have rook here attacking the pawn. So if he moves back, then I would win back the pawn. But I missed something. I missed that he could play knight b3 as an intermezzo move. So bishop takes, rook comes here, now knight b3, queen back, and bishop goes all the way back home. No free pawn because knight's blocking it. So we both kind of missed a trick here. But anyway, he plays this move, and now I've got this pawn defended. And he at this point, he offered a draw in the game. I think it was around this point. And I said no right away because, he's 1500. So anyway, this is the setup. Now over here, again, another strategic middle game timeout time. Time to take stock of the situation. Think about how you're going to play this middle game. Because look, you want to win the game. You don't want to just draw. So you want to keep pieces on the board if possible. Now his knight is a pretty nice piece, outpost. His bishop's also a pretty nice piece. So it's a little bit tricky, because bishop here is definitely tempting, but then we get into a simplified game, and I don't know if I can convert this into a win. So with all those factors in mind, I just decided to retreat. And now we have sort of a situation where, it's a real middle game tussle. Every move, you have to really think about it. One key motif in this position is that I have this triple pawn here. So the rook attacking this pawn is one of the key aspects of this game. it is doubled pawns, but it's actually not so bad. In fact, it's favorable for black to have this structure versus 3 in a row over there, I believe. Anyway, this was a move I didn't fully understand, but whatever. Now here, this is a move I'm most proud of. Over here was another tight tussle situation. What do you do in a game like this? What do you move? Like bishop here? Trading off? No, I don't want to trade off. Knight here, but what's the plan? What's the plan? So the plan is to take advantage of this weird pawn structure. You see, this bishop is hitting on all the light squares, and that's why my opponent has gone on the dark squares to sort of evade the bishop. But the knight, if we can get a knight right here, he could attack both of these things, and it would be very difficult for him to hold on to it, actually, not so straightforward. So that became a plan to maneuver the knight in that direction. So now this pawn is a critical piece in this puzzle here, and he's starting to advance his pawn. So now my bishop is feeling a bit offside. You know, he's hitting at air currently. So I needed to enable him, and I felt this was a good position because it blocks the king from centralizing itself. And if he wants to trade bishops, I don't mind at this point. At this point, I don't mind because I feel he's advanced his position enough, and my king is already a bit in the lead. So if he were to do that and knight goes here, I think my king would be able to come in at good speed into the center of the game, giving me a clear advantage. But he plays this very nice move, g3, because the point is he wants to keep the bishop. He wants to keep it alive and maintain pressure here, which is starting to build. So I kind of concede that, yeah, I got to do something to just stabilize this a little bit. And maybe it was a weak move, actually. There was probably something better. But anyway, he's coming after me, and here it's quite tricky. You know, if you make a wrong move here, you could easily get punished. For example, knight here, rook comes, and bishop can't go here because of the knight, can't go here because of the bishop, can't go here because of the knight, can only go here. And the next move will be pawn up. Bishop goes here and pawn up, and the bishop is trapped. So it's a really tricky position. And white is definitely putting the pressure on me right now. I'm really under quite a bit of pressure at this point on the clock and in the position. And it's kind of like surprising me, like, how's this guy playing so well? Is it Neiman alert? What's going on? So anyway, I'm just sort of holding on to everything, but it's really, really dicey. And here is where I cracked. I made the mistake which should have lost the game, actually. Bishop here. Okay, now if you want to pause this video and think why it loses game, go ahead. It's a tough one. You won't get it. So the reason why it loses is because rook comes here, threatening mate. Now I make an evasion square, but he can still go rook check. King goes up, and rook comes back here, attacking the weak f7 pawn and the knight at the same time. But the problem for him is my bishop is defending that pawn, so it's okay, and this knight can just move around, right? Except white has this move, blocking the bishop, defended by the knight, and then doubling down on the attack. So it would be rook and knight attacking here with the bishop cordoned off by the pawn. That's a great idea here, which he didn't see. He didn't see, so he went for the pawn instead, and I got the pawn back. So it became a bit of a tussle here. Very interesting game. And, you know, I just hold everything back. I hold everything solid. And here, I believe he kind of choked because he just played a safe move. It's like, I don't know what to do. Let me just play safe. I think he needed to do a bit better there because he had enough time and he could have thought of something a bit smarter. So anyway, now I've got some breathing room and I intend to make use of it. And again, he makes another weird move here. This really, I mean, if he's preparing to do this and wants to defend this because my rook's attacking it, it's kind of a shitty plan, I would say. Not really worth even pursuing. So I take the opportunity to get my king here into the action because now the rook's no longer here, putting a lot of irritations. And his knight goes into a very weird square. This is a very weird square because he's literally trapped, 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 trapped. Only defended by the bishop. So what do? I block the bishop right away. Just put a hole in it. And he takes, and then he finds this clever idea of rook here to defend the knight. So yeah, maybe he will save that knight after all. So anyway, I go after these 2 pawns, double pawn at least. And I take one, and then he comes down. And here is where black has a move that can win the game in one shot. Pause the video and see if you can find out what it is. Yeah, you guessed it. Rook c2 check. Why does this win the game? Because once the king moves, rook gets to come here, forcing a trade of the rooks. He's forced into trading them. And once the rooks are traded, you're in an endgame with a pawn up, knight and bishop, you're going to win. The rooks are the best pieces at making the defending side improve their chances. So you should always look to dilute the rooks off the board when you have an advantage. Anyway, I didn't do that. I instead kind of defended here, defending against a hidden attack. And he started attacking my pawn. And we have this kind of a structure here. And I played h4 because I didn't want to, h5, I didn't want to deal with the complications of if he plays h4 and f4 and all that stuff, you know. It can get a little bit messy, and I want to keep pawns on the board because that's the best way of increasing my winning odds. But yeah, it's a little feisty game here. It's not so easy to figure out the right way to win this because this knight's doing a very nice job of holding onto this pawn, defending that pawn, and this king is fairly central. So it's not easy to convert this at this point. I decide to attack the knight. It turns out this is not the optimal angle. I should have in fact gone bishop here. The main reason being because right now he could go pawn up here and start to disrupt these things. You know, for example, if I kill back, knight here, attacking bishop and pawn, and he wins back a pawn and disrupts my pawn structure at the same time. So he had chances here, but of course it's not easy to see all of that. And here, you know, I learned a lot about my own game, you know, because here I have a chance to win the knight, exchange the pieces, right? And I have an extra pawn, so easy endgame win, right? Easy endgame win. That's the thing, but I wasn't so sure. It looked a little bit dicey, and I just thought I can keep it solid together. I can wait for a better time. So I kind of kept some tension going on in the game, but I think this started to work out in my favor because as you can see, it started getting pushed on the back foot. And now would have been the right time to actually push the pawn ahead. But instead I played a slower move, a little too patient a move. Because this gives him a chance to harass the pawn from behind. And now he's hustling me here. And here is the critical moment. It looks like that pawn is for the taking, right? Rook and knight are attacking it at the same time, except no, I've got this idea. Rook comes here, pinning the knight against the rook, right? No, it goes even deeper because right now, if he took the knight, it should have been a draw, theoretically. Because rook comes here, knight goes here, rook wins the rook, knight checks king and rook and wins back to rook eventually. And it'll become a 3-on-3 minor piece endgame, which is a draw. So he didn't see that. But I still don't have a clear plan. I don't know how I'm gonna make inroads. How's my king gonna do anything? I really don't know. What am I doing here? I don't fully get what I'm supposed to do. Anyway, I just play something, and then he just plays something. But this something turns out to be a bad something because now my king can come into the action from here. And that's what I do. And now once the king comes here, I'm defending all 4 of these squares because of the bishop and king combination. So he decides, okay, let's fucking do it. Let's fucking do it. And now it was easy for me. This was all just a matter of being patient and just checking him around until he starts making a few little errors and then starting to give checkmate threats right over here. So he sacrifices a rook and it's game over. Because king goes here and king goes here and it's a easy game. So anyway, Hope you learned something from this. If not, I don't care. See ya.